There is something worth noticing about the habits that have consistently appeared across different cultures, different centuries, and different civilizations in the context of building strong, resilient, capable men. They are not comfortable. They are not convenient. They do not promise ease or optimization through minimal effort. They are practices that involve voluntary engagement with difficulty, cold, hunger, physical demand, controlled breathing under stress, and sustained stillness in the face of restlessness. And they keep appearing independently across vastly different traditions because they work. Not because of superstition or cultural mythology, but because of biology. Because the human body and the human mind are built to grow stronger in response to specific types of controlled stress. And these ancient habits delivered exactly the right kind of stress with remarkable precision. What has changed in the modern era is not the biology. The biology is identical to what it was 2,000 years ago. What has changed is the environment. We now live in conditions of almost unprecedented physical comfort, thermal neutrality, constant caloric availability, sedentary convenience, and chronic low-level psychological stress without the physical outlets that historically discharged it. And the result, for many men, is a body and mind that have been deprived of the specific inputs they're built to grow stronger from. This video is about restoring those inputs. We're going to go through 5 time-tested habits that cultures across history consistently use to build physical and mental strength in men. And we're going to explain the modern scientific mechanisms behind each one. Because understanding why these habits work at the biological level is what transforms them from interesting historical curiosities into compelling, personally motivating daily practices. Before we get into the 5 habits, let us establish the foundational scientific concept that ties all of them together. Because without this concept, the habits are just a list. With it, they become a coherent philosophy of strength building. The concept is hormesis. Hormesis is a biological phenomenon in which exposure to a low or moderate dose of a stressor that would be harmful in excess produces an adaptive strengthening response in the organism. In other words, a certain amount of controlled stress does not simply cause damage and recovery. It causes a net improvement in the organism's capacity to handle future stress. The body overcompensates for the challenge it was exposed to, becoming stronger than it was before. Hormesis is well documented across biology and is visible at every level from cellular to systemic. Exercise is perhaps the most familiar example. When you lift a weight that challenges your muscles, you create controlled micro-damage in the muscle tissue. The repair process that follows does not simply restore the muscle to its prior state. It makes it slightly larger and stronger in anticipation of encountering that demand again. The stress was the signal. The adaptation was the response. And the net result is growth. The same principle applies to virtually every other form of controlled biological challenge. Cold exposure, brief caloric restriction, breath holding under controlled conditions, mechanical load on bone and connective tissue. Even cognitive challenge produces hormetic adaptation in the nervous system. The organism exposed to controlled difficulty becomes measurably more capable of handling difficulty. This is why the habits that have historically built strong men all share a common feature. They are not habits of comfort. They are habits of voluntary, controlled, purposeful engagement with challenge. And the challenge is the medicine. With that framework established, let us get into the 5 habits. The first habit is cold exposure, and specifically the deliberate, regular practice of exposing the body to cold in ways that produce a powerful adaptive response across multiple physiological and psychological systems simultaneously. Cold exposure has appeared in strength and vitality practices across an extraordinary range of historical traditions. Ancient Greek and Roman athletic culture included cold water bathing as a regular practice. Nordic and Scandinavian traditions of winter bathing and cold plunge have persisted for centuries. Japanese misogi practice involves cold water immersion as a form of physical and mental purification. Military and warrior training traditions across many cultures incorporated cold exposure as a deliberate, hardening practice. These traditions arose independently in vastly different geographic and cultural contexts and converged on the same practice for the same reason. Cold exposure builds something in the body and the mind that is genuinely difficult to build through other means. Modern research has substantially clarified what that something is at the biological level. Cold exposure activates the sympathetic nervous system and produces a significant catecholamine response, including substantial releases of norepinephrine, which is also called noradrenaline. Research by neuroscientist Andrew Huberman and others has documented that cold water immersion produces norepinephrine increases of 200 to 300% or more above baseline. Norepinephrine has important effects on mood, focus, energy, and stress resilience. It is the neurochemical associated with the heightened alertness and sharpened attention that follows cold exposure, and that many men describe as one of its most compelling effects. Cold exposure also has documented effects on brown adipose tissue activation and metabolic health. Brown adipose tissue is a metabolically active form of fat that generates heat through a process called thermogenesis, burning calories in the process. Regular cold exposure increases brown adipose tissue activity and has been associated with improvements in insulin sensitivity and metabolic health markers that have downstream benefits for hormonal health. The relationship between cold exposure and testosterone has been examined in research, with some findings suggesting associations between regular cold exposure and maintained or improved testosterone levels. Though this specific area of research is still developing and should be interpreted with appropriate nuance rather than as a definitive claim. The mental strength dimension of cold exposure is arguably its most significant contribution for many men. The moment of entering cold water is one of the purest available examples of choosing voluntary discomfort over the immediate pull of comfort and avoidance. The body's first response to cold immersion is a powerful drive to escape, to gasp, to contract, to retreat. Choosing to remain, to breathe deliberately, to relax into the discomfort rather than fight it, is a direct practice of the psychological skill of tolerating difficulty without avoidance. And the research on interoceptive awareness and stress tolerance suggests that this kind of deliberate engagement with physical discomfort builds genuine psychological resilience that transfers to other domains of challenge. The practical implementation of cold exposure as a daily habit begins with contrast showers, which involve ending each shower with 30 to 60 seconds of the coldest water available. This is accessible to virtually any man regardless of access to cold plunge facilities and produces meaningful cold stimulus. Progressive increases in duration and intensity, including cold plunge access when available, allow adaptation and continued challenge over time. Research generally suggests that water temperatures below 15 degrees Celsius produce the most significant physiological responses, with immersion of 2 to 4 minutes at these temperatures capturing much of the hormetic benefit documented in research. The second habit is deliberate fasting, which across history has appeared in practically every major cultural and religious tradition as a practice associated with strength, clarity, discipline, and spiritual and physical renewal. Islamic Ramadan fasting, Jewish Yom Kippur and other fast days, Christian fasting traditions across denominations, Buddhist fasting practices, indigenous fasting ceremonies, ancient Greek philosophical traditions of voluntary dietary restriction, and warrior cultures that trained in fasted states all converged on the deliberate withholding of food as a practice with physical and mental benefits. This convergence across traditions, so different in every other respect, is notable and points toward a genuine underlying biological benefit rather than purely cultural mythology. Modern nutritional science has identified multiple mechanisms through which deliberate fasting produces beneficial physiological adaptations. Intermittent fasting, which involves restricting eating to a specific window of the day, typically between 6 and 10 hours, is the most researched contemporary version of this ancient practice. Autophagy is one of the most significant benefits of fasting that modern research has clarified. Autophagy is a cellular cleaning process in which cells identify and break down damaged proteins, dysfunctional organelles, and other cellular debris. It is activated by the absence of nutrients, particularly by the drop in insulin and amino acid signaling that follows a period of fasting. The Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine in 2016 was awarded to Yoshinori Osumi, specifically for his work clarifying the mechanisms of autophagy. Regular activation of autophagy through periodic fasting is associated with improved cellular health, reduced inflammatory burden, and meaningful longevity-associated benefits. Insulin sensitivity is significantly improved by regular intermittent fasting in research. The periods of low insulin that fasting produces allow insulin receptors to reset their sensitivity, counteracting the insulin resistance that chronic frequent eating, particularly in the context of modern high-carbohydrate diets, tends to promote over time. Improved insulin sensitivity supports better metabolic health, healthier body composition, and the hormonal environment most conducive to testosterone maintenance and vitality. Growth hormone secretion is significantly increased during fasting periods. Research has found substantial increases in growth hormone pulse amplitude and frequency during fasting, particularly during overnight fasts extended into the morning. Growth hormone supports muscle maintenance, fat metabolism, tissue repair, and overall physical resilience. Its naturally increased secretion during fasting provides a physiological rationale for the enhanced physical recovery and body composition effects that many men report from consistent, intermittent fasting practice. Mental clarity and cognitive sharpness during fasting periods are widely reported and have a physiological basis in the increased production of brain-derived neurotrophic factor and in the metabolic shift toward ketone production that extended fasting promotes. Ketones are an alternative fuel produced from fat that the brain uses efficiently and that many people report as associated with a quality of focused mental clarity distinct from glucose-fueled cognition. The mental strength dimension of fasting is again significant. Choosing to delay eating in the morning when food is available and appetite is present is a daily practice of exercising governance over immediate impulse in the service of a longer-term goal. Cultures across history recognize this disciplinary dimension of fasting as inseparable from its physical benefits. Modern psychology would describe it as a practice of executive function and delayed gratification, both of which are associated with better self-regulation and resilience across life domains. Practical implementation of deliberate fasting as a daily habit begins with time-restricted eating, choosing an eating window of 8 to 10 hours and consistently maintaining it. For most men, this means finishing the last meal of the day in the early evening and not eating again until late morning or midday the following day. Beginning with a 10-hour window and progressively contracting it as adaptation develops is a manageable approach. Hydration with water, black coffee, and plain tea during the fasting window is generally considered compatible with maintaining the fasted state for the metabolic purposes described. Important medical context here. Deliberate fasting is not appropriate for everyone and is specifically contraindicated in certain health conditions and circumstances. Men with diabetes, metabolic disorders, a history of disordered eating, or other relevant health conditions should discuss any fasting practice with their doctor before implementing it. This is practical health guidance, not a legal disclaimer. The third habit is breathwork, and among the 5 habits discussed in this video, it may have the longest continuous history of deliberate practice for the purpose of building physical and mental strength and resilience. Pranayama in the yoga tradition of India represents thousands of years of systematized breath practice aimed at influencing physiological and psychological states. Tummo breathing in Tibetan Buddhist practice has been documented by researchers, including Herbert Benson of Harvard Medical School, to produce remarkable physiological effects, including the ability to generate and sustain body heat in extreme cold. Ancient Greek athletic preparation incorporated specific breathing disciplines. Martial arts traditions across Asia developed breath control as a central component of training rather than an auxiliary skill. Modern research has substantially clarified the mechanisms through which controlled breathing produces its effects on physiology and psychology. The autonomic nervous system, which governs the body's automatic physiological functions, including heart rate, blood pressure, hormone release, and immune function, is normally outside conscious voluntary control. Breathing is unique among automatic physiological functions in being simultaneously automatic and voluntarily controllable. This creates a direct pathway through which deliberate breathing practice can influence the autonomic nervous system and, by extension, the physiological and psychological states it regulates. Slow, diaphragmatic breathing with extended exhalations activates the parasympathetic nervous system, reducing cortisol, lowering heart rate, reducing blood pressure, and creating the physiological conditions associated with calm, focused, recovery-oriented states. This is the mechanism behind the stress reduction and emotional regulation effects of controlled breathing practices. Conversely, deliberate hyperventilation followed by breath retention, as practiced in the Wim Hof method and similar contemporary breathwork protocols, produces a different set of effects, including controlled hypocapnia, which is reduced carbon dioxide, sympathetic nervous system activation, increased alkalinity, and enhanced cold tolerance and stress resilience. Research by Matthias Cox and colleagues at Radboud University Medical Center found that men trained in Wim Hof breathing techniques were able to voluntarily influence their immune response to endotoxin injection in ways that untrained controls could not, demonstrating a genuinely remarkable capacity for deliberate breath work to influence physiological systems previously considered entirely automatic. Carbon dioxide tolerance, which is the ability to remain calm and functional during states of elevated carbon dioxide or reduced oxygen, is a significant component of physical and psychological stress resilience. It is developed through breath hold training, where the discomfort of the breath hold urge is deliberately tolerated rather than immediately relieved. This tolerance development transfers directly to the capacity to remain calm and functional under other forms of physiological and psychological stress. Heart rate variability, which is a measure of the variation in time between heartbeats and a widely used indicator of autonomic nervous system health and stress resilience, is consistently improved by regular breathwork practice. Higher heart rate variability is associated with better cardiovascular health, better stress regulation, better immune function, and better cognitive performance. The practical implementation of breathwork as a daily strength habit involves two complementary practices. Morning breathwork for activation, which can involve a brief session of deliberate diaphragmatic breathing combined with controlled breath retention, preparing the nervous system for the demands of the day, and evening breathwork for recovery and parasympathetic activation, which involves slow nasal breathing with extended exhalations, supporting the transition to restorative sleep. Even 5 to 10 minutes of deliberate daily breathwork practice produces measurable physiological benefits, and the compounding effects of consistent daily practice over weeks and months are genuinely substantial. The fourth habit is load-bearing physical training, which requires the least historical explanation because it is the most obviously ancient and most universally consistent men's strength practice across all of human history. Every culture that has left historical records has documented some form of deliberate physical training involving the lifting, carrying, or moving of heavy loads. Ancient Greek gymnasium culture is perhaps the most thoroughly documented, with systematic progressive physical training recognized as foundational to both physical capability and character development. Olympic competition in ancient Greece included strength events requiring genuine physical development. Roman legionary training involved carrying heavy loads over long distances as a deliberate conditioning practice. Ancient Chinese and Japanese martial arts traditions systematically developed physical strength and capability through progressive physical challenge. Indigenous cultures globally incorporated physical tests and training as central elements of male development and community contribution. The scientific basis for load-bearing physical training as a strength-building practice is arguably the most thoroughly researched of the 5 habits discussed in this video, with decades of exercise science providing clear mechanistic understanding of how resistance training builds both physical and mental strength. Progressive resistance training, meaning the systematic application of increasing physical load to the muscular and skeletal systems over time, produces a well-characterized cascade of adaptations. Muscle protein synthesis is stimulated by the mechanical tension and metabolic stress of resistance exercise, producing increases in muscle fiber size and strength over training cycles. Neural adaptations, including improved motor unit recruitment and intermuscular coordination, begin within days of training initiation and contribute significantly to early strength gains. Connective tissue adaptation, including improvements in tendon and ligament strength and bone density, develop more slowly but are critically important for long-term physical resilience. The hormonal response to resistance training is one of the most significant connections between this ancient habit and men's hormonal health. Acute resistance training sessions produce significant increases in testosterone and growth hormone. Chronic resistance training, meaning consistent training over months and years, is associated with higher baseline testosterone levels and better overall anabolic hormonal profiles compared to sedentary men. Research has found that compound movements involving large muscle groups, including squats, deadlifts, presses, and rows, produce the most significant acute hormonal responses, providing a physiological rationale for the emphasis these movements receive in historically informed strength training approaches. Bone density, which is increasingly recognized as a critical health marker, particularly as men age, is significantly maintained and improved by load-bearing exercise. The mechanical stress of lifting heavy loads provides the osteogenic stimulus that signals bone-building cells called osteoblasts to maintain and increase bone density. Men who engage in consistent resistance training maintain significantly higher bone density into later life compared to sedentary men, with direct implications for long-term physical resilience and independence. The mental strength dimension of load-bearing physical training is substantial and has been described by philosophers, military leaders, and athletes across history with remarkable consistency. The experience of choosing to engage with a heavy load when the option to avoid it is available, of persisting through the discomfort of genuine physical effort, of completing a challenging session when quitting was possible, build something that transfers directly to non-physical domains of challenge. Modern psychological research on self-efficacy, which is the belief in one's capacity to accomplish difficult things, supports this transfer. Men who consistently accomplish physically difficult things develop a genuine experiential basis for confidence in their capacity to handle difficulty more broadly. The practical implementation of load-bearing physical training as a daily strength habit involves 3 to 4 resistance training sessions per week, built around compound movements that train the whole body, with progressive overload implemented consistently over training cycles, beginning with mastery of fundamental movement patterns before adding load, training with sufficient intensity to create genuine physiological challenge, and allowing adequate recovery between sessions are the foundational principles that have driven this habit across its long history. The fifth and final habit is the one that most men in the modern world most consistently underestimate in its contribution to genuine strength. It is voluntary stillness, which is the deliberate practice of bringing the mind to focused, quiet presence and sustaining that state despite the powerful pull of distraction and restlessness. This practice appears across history in forms including Stoic contemplation in ancient Greece and Rome, meditation in Buddhist and Hindu traditions spanning millennia, contemplative prayer practices in Christian monastic tradition, Zazen sitting practice in Zen Buddhism, and numerous indigenous mindfulness traditions. The diversity of forms through which voluntary stillness has been practiced across cultures and centuries reflects the universality of its recognized value for the development of mental strength, clarity, emotional regulation, and psychological resilience. What is the modern scientific basis for a practice that has historically been described in spiritual and philosophical rather than physiological terms? The neuroscience of meditation and mindfulness practice has developed substantially over the past 2 decades, and the findings are genuine and significant. Structural brain changes associated with regular meditation practice have been documented using neuroimaging, including increased gray matter density in regions associated with attention regulation, emotional processing and self-awareness, and reduced gray matter in the amygdala, which is the brain's primary threat detection and fear response center. Cortisol reduction is one of the most consistently documented physiological effects of regular meditation practice. A large body of research has found that consistent mindfulness meditation practice produces meaningful reductions in baseline cortisol levels and in cortisol reactivity to stressors. Given the direct inverse relationship between cortisol and testosterone we have discussed throughout this series, this cortisol-lowering effect has direct implications for men's hormonal health and vitality. Prefrontal cortex function, which governs executive control, deliberate decision-making, impulse regulation, and the capacity to maintain goal-directed behavior in the face of competing impulses, is strengthened by regular meditation practice in ways that are measurable both neurologically and behaviorally. This improvement in prefrontal executive function is one of the primary mechanisms through which meditation practice produces the self-regulation, emotional stability, and purposeful decision-making that historically have been associated with mature male leadership and strength. Heart rate variability improvements from regular meditation practice parallel those produced by breathwork, reflecting the shared mechanism of both practices in supporting parasympathetic nervous system tone and autonomic nervous system resilience. The specifically male strength dimension of voluntary stillness practice is worth naming directly because it is the aspect most counterintuitive to many men. In a culture that associates strength with action, productivity, and visible external achievement, the practice of sitting quietly and doing nothing visible can seem entirely contrary to strength building. But the capacity to remain with one's own mind in stillness, to observe thoughts and feelings without being controlled by them, to resist the pull of distraction and restlessness without surrendering to it, is a form of strength that most men never systematically develop. And its absence is the source of many of the reactivity, impulsivity, and emotional management challenges that undermine both personal and professional effectiveness in men's lives. The Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius, who governed the Roman Empire and commanded armies, practiced daily philosophical contemplation and recorded it in what became the Meditations, one of the most enduring texts in human history. Japanese samurai were trained in Zen meditation alongside swordsmanship. The historical association between voluntary stillness practice and effective male leadership and strength is not a coincidence. It reflects the genuine contribution of mental clarity, emotional regulation, and purposeful presence to effective action in the world. The practical implementation of voluntary stillness as a daily strength habit begins with 10 to 20 minutes of daily seated meditation, practicing the simple and genuinely difficult discipline of returning attention to the breath or another anchor point each time it is drawn away by thought. The return itself, the moment of noticing distraction and choosing to come back, is the training. It is the mental equivalent of the repetition in resistance training. Each return strengthens the neural circuitry of attentional control and executive regulation, beginning with a consistent daily time, ideally in the morning before the stimulation of screens and external demands establishes the mental tone of the day, and maintaining that consistency over weeks and months produces compounding benefits that gradually become more than the sum of individual sessions. Now, let us bring all 5 habits together into the complete system they form when practiced in combination. Cold exposure builds physical and psychological resilience through hormetic adaptation to thermal stress and deliberate engagement with discomfort. Deliberate fasting builds metabolic flexibility, cellular health, and the discipline of governing appetite and impulse. Breathwork builds autonomic nervous system resilience, stress regulation capacity, and the physiological basis for calm, focused performance under pressure. Load-bearing physical training builds muscular and skeletal strength, hormonal health, and the experiential foundation of physical self-efficacy. And voluntary stillness builds the mental clarity, emotional regulation, and executive control that determines how effectively all other strength is channeled and expressed. Each habit develops a different dimension of the integrated physical and mental strength that these practices have been building in men across cultures and centuries. And when practiced together, their effects are not simply additive. They are synergistic. Better sleep from breathwork and voluntary stillness practice amplifies the testosterone production that resistance training stimulates. Lower cortisol from meditation protects the hormonal gains that fasting and cold exposure support. The physical confidence built through load-bearing training reinforces the psychological resilience developed through cold exposure. The metabolic health supported by fasting amplifies the vascular and hormonal benefits of every other habit. The man who consistently practices all 5 of these habits is building something that no single supplement, no single intervention, and no single optimization strategy can replicate. He is building the kind of integrated physical and psychological strength that has always been built the same way, through consistent, voluntary, purposeful engagement with difficulty across multiple dimensions of human experience. That has not changed. The biology is the same. The habits are the same. The mechanisms, now clarified by modern science, are the same. What is different is the understanding. And understanding changes implementation from blind tradition into informed, intentional daily practice. Start with a habit that addresses your greatest current limitation. If your stress reactivity is high and your cortisol chronic, begin with breath work and voluntary stillness. If your physical training has been inconsistent, begin there. If you have never experienced cold exposure deliberately, add that. Build one habit into your daily rhythm before adding the next. Give each one the time it needs to produce its adaptations, which is weeks to months of consistent practice rather than days. The returns on this investment compound in ways that cannot be fully anticipated at the beginning. The man 6 months into consistent practice of these 5 habits is meaningfully different from the man who started. Not because of any single dramatic change, but because of the accumulated adaptations across 5 biological and psychological systems, all being consistently developed in the direction of greater strength and resilience. That is what time-tested habits produce. Not quick transformation, but genuine, lasting compounding strength. The kind that history consistently recognized, and that science is now explaining. Thank you for watching this all the way through. If this gave you something genuinely valuable, share it with a man in your life who is committed to building real strength. Subscribe for more honest, evidence-based men's health content. And drop a comment below telling me which of these 5 habits you are starting with and why. This community learns from each other, and your commitment to your own strength matters.